The Blood of the Dead ending cutscene took Zombies players on an emotional trip, where we got to see a longtime fan-favorite character in Edward Richtofen literally have the life sucked out of him before our very eyes. But with that version of Richtofen now gone, there is a gaping hole left in the Blood of the Dead crew's Primis, with only 3 members remaining instead of the usual 4. But it won't stay that way for much longer. Richtofen will be replaced. But before we reveal the likely candidate, we have to talk about which crew we're going to play as in the Black Ops 4 DLC season. Now there's quite a few different versions of our 4 characters that are active right now in the Zombies storyline at this point in Black Ops 4. The first is we have the Primis Crew minus Richtofen from Blood of the Dead. The second is the Great War Primis Crew. This is the crew that Richtofen is a part of that we see in the ending cutscene. If Great War Richtofen is here in Blood of the Dead, we could assume that Great War Takeo, Dempsey, and Nikolai are somewhere else in the ether. Next, of course, we have the post-Moon Ultimus crew, which was rescued from Hangar 4 in the classified ending cutscene. And then there's the big question mark on the 4th Primis crew, and that is the Primis crew that appears in the classified ending cutscene, which we'll talk about in just a second. So Treyarch has a bunch of versions of our 4 characters to play with going into the DLC season for Black Ops 4 Zombies. And who knows, they could just drop the Blood of the Dead crew entirely. I hope they don't do that, but they obviously could, and just run with like Ultimus and the Great War crew or something like that. But if they don't, if they decide to keep going with the Blood of the Dead Primis crew, there's 2 main contenders to take Richtofen's spot as the 4th person of that crew. The first is pretty boring, and the second is very interesting. The first is a theory proposed by none other than MrRoflwaffles, who suggests in a theory that the Primis crew we see at the ending cutscene of Classified is in fact the Blood of the Dead crew. Now obviously you noticed during that cutscene, Richtofen is there in his regular Primis Richtofen clothes. Now Milo discounts the theory that this Richtofen is the Great War Richtofen. He's saying, you know what, Treyarch wouldn't be so petty as to just change his clothes to confuse us, right? This is not the Great War tunic wearing Richtofen that we see in the Blood of the Dead ending cutscene. If this is the Blood of the Dead crew, they have found a new Richtofen to be their 4th. The contender he lays out for that new Richtofen is someone he calls the Young Richtofen that we see at the beginning of the Blood of the Dead intro cutscene. This is the version of Richtofen that hands the Chronorium to the version of Richtofen that dies in Blood of the Dead. So Milo's saying it's possible that this Blood of the Dead crew minus their version of Richtofen went and got a replacement Richtofen that they pick up and convince to join them on their quest to defeat Dr. Monty, then traveling to secure Ultimus. Like I said, that is the least interesting option. They replace Richtofen with another Richtofen. That's just so boring. It makes the emotional weight of that version of Richtofen's death at the end of the Blood of the Dead cutscene basically just null and void. It just wipes it out, says, we can get another Richtofen, no problem. It's the least interesting replacement for Richtofen I could possibly think of, another Richtofen. And besides, we'll be seeing other versions of Richtofen enough with the Ultimus crew and the Great War Primis crew still active within the storyline. No, I want to propose a different, more interesting option as to who's going to be the replacement for Richtofen going forward for the Blood of the Dead crew. I reckon it's high time that we put a face to a name. Someone who's been in a very similar position to the Primis crew in the past. Someone who Primis has suffered and fought alongside during their countless travels through the cycle. And that would be the famous 4th test subject, who in a Call of the Dead radio simply referred to him as the specimen from Mexico, Pablo Marinus. Now officially, Pablo died on September 2nd, 1945 in the Dreisendrache Castle as a result of experiments being done on him with element 115. But the story and history of Pablo Marinus is much more wonky than born in the 20th century and dies in 1945, because we know that Pablo fought in the Great War alongside a version of our four characters wielding the elemental staves. The best description we have of this event from Pablo Marinus is a result of a solved cipher from Gorod Krovi. It's super interesting and I'll read it for you now. My name is Pablo, or at least I think it was. I don't know anymore. I have been locked away, held prisoner in this cell for many months by German scientists. They keep experimenting on me, pumping me full of some blue liquid. I think it's responsible for the repeated visions I've been having, which I swear look and feel real. In my vision, my name is Pablo Marinus, and I am a knight coming back from the Crusades. I fight in a great battle against strange, demon-like creatures who are trying to devour the earth. At one point it appears I am doomed, trapped in the tentacles of a great three-headed beast, when suddenly 4 knights decimated with magical elemental staves, saving me from certain death. There are other worldly creatures that fight on our side against the demons. The creepy thing is that the sigils on their tunics resemble the ones I noticed in the stones here at theorized Castle as I was being brought to my cell. I just hope I can eventually find a way to escape this place. Pablo was at the great battle against the Apothecons, fighting alongside a version of our 4 characters long before he was a test subject for German scientists at theorized Castle. Now, if Treyarch wants to make Pablo the 4th member of Primis, they're going to need a creative way to recruit him from the past of the time around the Great Battle into the actual Blood of the Dead crew. That, or of course, at the end of the Blood of the Dead cutscene, they could use those portals to travel between dimensions and time and rescue Pablo from the clutches of the German scientists who are experimenting on them. And remember, I think Treyarch can do this within the confines of the Zombies timeline poster, because the poster represents the cycle. But as Great War Richtofen says in the Blood of the Dead ending cutscene, the cycle is broken. This no longer represents what's going to happen in the Black Ops 4 DLC season. We are in uncharted waters here. Pablo's talked about both in maps involving the Primis Crew and of course in maps involving the Ultimis Crew. Even in Classified, Dempsey has a quote talking about Pablo.
Reminds me of that time Pablo threw up in his beer glass. Still finished it though.
Both versions of our characters have a long shared history with Pablo Marinus. A lot of area for character development for Pablo and his relationship between the other characters, Nikolai, Takio, and Dempsey, are there for the taking if Treyarch wants to make the plunge. Remember that with Richtofen out of the picture, Pablo does not have to constantly look his captor in the eyes. He is now fighting with his fellow test subjects, not fighting just for Richtofen telling him what to do all the time. With Nikolai taking charge of the Primis crew, Pablo, a new addition to this crew, wouldn't vie for leadership of the group like Richtofen would if he continued traveling with the Blood of the Dead crew. Adding a new awesome character to an Ether storyline Zombies crew that our characters already like would be a great way to make that version of Richtofen's death impactful in Blood of the Dead and move on with the Blood of the Dead crew with Nikolai as its new leader, with the addition of Pablo Marinus as the 4th character. This would feel like a totally original crew moving forward, where they would go on as 4-character crew going into Battle Dr. Monty, where we know Primis will fail and Ultimis will prevail. But that is a story for another day. But that concludes this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to tippity tap that thumbs up button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I want to give a huge shout out to everybody in the notification squad with that bell icon turned on. You guys are awesome. Let me know what you think of the theory down in the comments, and hey, if you don't think it's going to be Young Richtofen or Pablo Marinus, who do you think's going to fill in for Richtofen as the 4th member of the Blood of the Dead crew? Down in the comments. But I want to thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you with another Zombies news video tomorrow. Peace.